I want to welcome everybody. We are the Hope and Healing Foundation. Our mission is to decrease suicidal deaths among youths and veterans, among others also. But the foundation was developed to offer free mental health services to individuals who are experiencing debilitating mental health issues. So we are putting together programs, initiating in schools, colleges, and the community of South Florida. So we welcome everybody, and we wish that you enjoy tonight's meeting.
So we are going to move forward. We're going to give about anybody who is in the room. We'll call out your name. We'll give you a couple seconds if you would like to speak. Then just give a brief introduction of yourself real quick, and then we will move forward to the guest speaker. We just want everybody to know who's in the room, who you are. So we'll start off with Miss Linda. Would you like to introduce yourself real quick? Hold on, let me unmute you. I'll unmute you. I see you're a little farther away from your screen. One moment. Go ahead.
I did it. Hi, I'm Linda Crea, and I live in Fort Pierce, South Hutchinson Island. And I've only been in Florida 3 years, and I am a spiritual energy healer using meditation and holistic methods to relax the body and mind and spirit. So that's primarily what I can do for the group if my services are fit in.
Thank you, Linda. All right, Kimberly, would you like to introduce yourself?
My name is Kimberly. I was in the Army. I'm just tuning in. I've never tuned into one. It's my first time.
All right, welcome.
Welcome. Thank you very much. Jim, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hello, everyone. My name is Jim. Retired Air Force. Anytime DP sends me an email, there's a Zoom meeting, I try to get in on it.
Well, we thank you for supporting him and supporting us.
All right.
All right, Tim, would you like to introduce yourself? Oh, I'll unmute you. On.
Tim, are you there?
All right.
Okay, let's move on.
No, he's right there. He's trying to get it. Oh, hold on. All right, Tim, did you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Tim McCann, and David sent me the email, and just wanted to listen in on it.
All right, well, thanks for joining. Lisa?
Hi, everybody. I'm Lisa Wildman.
Oh, you're cutting
I
out.
work with DP, and I am a Florida native, so you guys are near and dear to my heart anyway. And so here for the cause.
All right, thank you.
Welcome.
Heath, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, also a Army vet, worked with DP also. I saw the email and wanted to participate and hope to learn some things.
Beautiful, thank you.
Welcome, Heath.
Welcome. Renee?
Hi, Renee Crabb here. I'm living in Maryland, so I'll be doing a lot of support from the state of Maryland. I'm in the education career path, and I serve as a school level building administrator, so I'll be able to assist from that standpoint. Glad to meet everyone.
Thank you, Renee. All right, we have, I'm not sure what the name is, but I have iPad. That is the description.
Hi, my name is Chris. Got an invite from DP, retired Army.
All right, thanks, Chris.
Welcome.
Thank you for joining us.
Thanks.
John?
We have a John.
All right.
All right, let's go to Hiram Gonzalez.
Yes, how you doing? This is Hiram Gonzalez, a former Marine. I received the invite from the DP, and I hope to join this team one day.
All right.
All right.
Welcome. All right, we have, I'm not sure how to pronounce it, BT Baba Atua. Would you like to introduce yourself? All right, and then we have Sam Sphere. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Sam, anybody there?
All right. So we will move forward. I thank you all for joining, all of our service members and retired service members. Thank you for your service and thank you for attending today. We are going to move on to our guest speaker that a lot of you have come to support, and we thank you very much, and I'm sure he thanks you as well. David DP Pineda, I think I said that correctly, did I?
Yes.
All right.
Yes, you're on it.
All right. I normally put your name, so I'm glad that I did not. So he is a U.S. Army disabled veteran. He is also a veteran master coach and a team leader at VACI Champions. DP enlisted in February of 1999 and was one of the first responders in New York City on 9/11. During his service, he deployed in support of Operation Enduring Freedom and Operation Iraq Freedom. He holds 2 advanced degrees. Most notably, he is a graduate of the Marine Corps University, Command and Staff College in Quantico, VA. He went to serve with the Federal Air Marshal Service within the US Homeland Security Department. DP is rated 100% for his service-connected disabilities. He is currently in training for a service dog named Legend, whose namesake is for Army SEAL Chris Kyle. The pair was due to graduate in late spring 2020, but the pandemic delayed the completion of the training. However, the 2 will be together soon, and it's back on, the training is back on. DP has been with VA Claim Insider since 2017. He was first a client, and now he is a veteran expert, claims expert, and now as well as a veteran master coach. DP is originally from New York City. His wife, Jonel, and their 3 children, they live in Virginia. He is a family man and devoted to his family. He is also leading service of his team, VACI, and preparing to welcome Legend into his life as a skilled service canine. So we want to give the floor to Mr. DP. He is going to be discussing with us the invisible injury with preference on mental health and veterans. So the floor is yours.
Awesome. Thank you. Can you guys hear me pretty well?
Yeah.
Okay, just making sure. I had to redo a few things here on the desk, so fun times. I appreciate the opportunity to come and speak with you all today. I have some guests with me as well. Some of my coaches and some of our clients actually are here as well. And I think it's opportune to have these conversations because when we look at the topic of the invisible injuries, right? One of the things I always say when we do our lives or any events like this is, you know, this does not constitute professional advice. I'm not a therapist, nor a lawyer, nor a mental health practitioner. I'm just a guy who was in a foxhole that found a way to get out and is just trying to help the next person kind of get out of the same hole. And one of the things that I think it's happening in our veteran community, especially as it relates to the invisible injuries, is someone like myself would be the typical person that would not have spoken up about the things that we deal with. Reason being, a lot of veterans, sadly, what tends to happen is we segue from service into something similar, right? So you're 16, 17, you decide you're going to do something, you serve, off you go to the military, you spend your time doing the things you do there, you're trained on how to do a specific thing, and then afterward, it ends, right? It ends either by retirement, it ends via an injury, or it ends abruptly because of things in life. That said, there is no transition back, right? We all go through basic training. You've all heard, you've seen the movies, you've heard the stories, you know someone, right? There's this whole training period, and then one day it just ends. So there's a fall off. So for many of us, what ends up happening is we tend to just kind of, supplement that with something else. We go into a similar line of work. So what ends up happening is for individuals that may be exposed to trauma right? We're bred to do something, which is suck it up and drive on. So anybody who's been in the military, you've heard this, right? You suck it up, you drive on. And the problem with the military, outside of the military, is what wins wars, campaigns, and conditions an individual to do all the things that we admire in the military takes a lot of selfless service, right? It takes looking out for your fellow brother or sister and doing things that many have paid the ultimate sacrifice, right? When you look at someone that may, let's say, have, you know, given their life in service and the things that they did, right? What gave them that intestinal fortitude to, you know, push forward despite, you know, oncoming adversaries or challenges or being shot and so forth. And I mention that because it's a push. However, for many of us, we stay in that mindset and we learn how to kind of carry that on into other aspects of life. And there are a lot of positives for some people, right? They'll say, hey, DP's dedicated, right? Kimberly is high speed, low drag. Jim is a go-getter. He is the kind of guy that gets the job done. But we do the same things when we're dealing with trauma, when we're dealing with hurts, when we're dealing with things that you can't see. So many of the veterans that we've worked with, what happens is they kind of leave service with this mentality of, at the end of the day, I have my 4 limbs, right? All fingers are intact. Everything seems to be fine. Everything is great. Someone has it worse than me, right? And we always kind of default to that, to the other person. So part of the issue is we donned the camouflage uniform in service, but then we leave service, and what we do is we emotionally keep the camouflage on, right? So when you look at it, one of the things I tell a lot of clients when we work with them is, when we are working with said clients that are especially dealing with mental health or PTSD, I would venture to say, if you were to walk into any veteran's cubicle, desk, or place of work, they're probably going to say they're probably not going to have a lot of personal things. And the reason being is, when you're dealing with PTSD, when you're dealing with a mental health condition, when you're dealing with trauma, depression, anxiety, so forth, whether it be combat PTSD, non-combat PTSD, personal assault, military sexual trauma, it doesn't matter. Trauma is trauma is trauma for this example here. And what ends up happening is we end up just masking ourselves, right? We don't give away what's important. So it's no different in combat, right? When you look at fight or flight, what ends up happening for a lot of veterans is you're always in that state of hyper-arousal, right? So you're defending those things that matter. So I went from, let's say, serving with Kimberly, and now making sure that we both get home safe, if that means that I would have to do what I have to do to make sure she's good to go, she would do the same thing for me, right? Brothers in arms, sisters in arms. Now, we leave service, and what ends up happening is that we never really open up that aperture of trust anymore. So for many individuals, back to my example of the cubicle, they don't have anything personal, right? Everybody knows them. Everybody's worked in an office. You've seen someone who has their entire cubicle filled with personal effects and pictures of their kids and pictures of their favorite sporting events and picture of things they care about. And when you walk to a veteran's cubicle, it tends to usually be very kind of bland, right? There's nothing personal. There's no pictures of the kids. There's no personal artifacts there. Maybe you might see something military, like you might see a Marine Corps, an Army, a little sticker. But at the end of the day, the reality is that if Michaela said something about the little certificate on there, it meant nothing because it's a work award anyway, right? It's nothing personal. So what ends up happening for many of us, we just learn how to camouflage the things we care about, and we don't let anyone in. So over time, for many veterans, what ends up happening is they don't have those skills to be able to relate to others, right? They've never came back from service to a degree. One of the things that I've heard recently that really resonated with me is a lot of individuals sadly don't come back from trauma, whether it be combat or what have you. So all this to say that there's emotional camouflage that happens. There's an aspect of not sharing, not talking, not doing things. And because no one sees it, right, we'll just continue life as everything is fine. And the problem, segueing this into the invisible injuries, are, for all intents and purposes, when we would see someone, we'd say, well, they're fine. Now we in turn may have said trauma, and we kind of have that internal struggle of, we know something is up, but we're trying to lie to ourselves, right? Or we might not know something is up. And those around us may try to dig deep, may try to reach forward, may try to reach in, but we won't let them. And what ends up happening is that work situation, right? Many of us know that in work, you need to have the ability to have interpersonal relationships. So all of a sudden now, when I'm invited to the barbecue, not going. When you're invited to someone's going away thing, not happening. And you start to less and less do those things that you're supposed to do as part of the job. So now you become the person that gets the job done, right? Give it to DP, you'll get it done. Give it to so-and-so that they'll get the job, accomplished in a timely fashion. But don't ask about anything, right? Monday morning when you come around and Tim says, how was the weekend? The response will always be the same, right? Not long enough, the same as usual. There's never anything personal that comes out. And over a period of time, you start to realize that you don't even know who that person is. They've been there for 5 or 10 years or 20 years, but you really just don't know at the end of the day who is DP or who is he. Who are these individuals, right? What really are they a part of? So looking at, what we carry inside, I think it's conversations like this that really start to put a face to things, because the problem with invisible injuries is sometimes they're invisible to ourselves as veterans or trauma victims. And we don't know what we're dealing with until someone's able to kind of speak truth and reach out and have a conversation. And sadly, many a times it's not going to come from a professional, right? It's going to be a brother in arm or a sister in arm that's going to reach out and say, hey, it's not for nothing, Lisa, but you might want to, have a talk with someone. Or, hey, Renee, something's off here. What's going on, right? And those that you serve with or someone who's been through similar experiences is able to reach out to have a conversation that for many hopefully leads to professional therapy. So one of the things that I think is great about a conversation like this, specifically to the veteran plight, and even any of those that may have had similar traumas, it's being able to break the stigma. Right here I am as a person who served, a person who went into counterterrorism, a person that went into law enforcement, and for all intents and purposes, I could have just kept my mouth shut, done the job, and either killed myself by physically pushing myself to points of that I couldn't hang anymore, or to a point where psychologically many of individuals that I served with, sadly took their lives, right? Because it just got to a point where they couldn't dig themselves out of anymore. And, the appearance or the, what would they say or what would they do, or I can't do this now, becomes all crutches. So having conversations like this, I think is the first part, being able to share and say, hey, look, this is what PTSD looks like, right? I'm a service dog and trained that's coming. And at the end of the day, I'm still trying to function, navigate through life, but I have to ultimately weigh out the bigger picture of saying what counted more, the appearance of being this person, this job title, this thing, or valuing myself in some shape, fashion, or form. So one of the things that I found very useful in talking with veterans and those that have experienced trauma, it's finding anything. It doesn't matter what it is, whether it be your spouse, your kids, your dog, anything that you can hang on to, they'll give you the ability to say, I will hold on to that and that'll let me get some help or reach out for something. Because sometimes you need just something to grab onto. And for many of veterans, right, specifically, the hard part is you went through this ramp up period of acquiring a skill set. Psychologically, though, many of us are stuck in that period that we served. You might be 40, 50, 60, 70, even 80. And in your mind, you're still that 17-year-old, 18-year-old, 19-year-old kid who went to boot camp, that 20-something-year-old kid that went to combat and came back a different person. And when VACI, one of the things that we look to do on our side, when we look at coaches, what is really all that about? It's helping start the conversation. It's helping understand that it's okay to not be okay. And what I mean by that is that looking at an invisible injury, the problem is because it is invisible, no one sees what it is that caused it. So it's easy to just say, oh no, he's a grumpy person, right? Or he's a depressed person, or he's this or that. An example I've used to try to break this up for individuals is a limp. If I were hit by a vehicle, at the end of the day, what you would see is simply that DP has a limp. He was hit by a vehicle, and that's why he limps today. It's a known fact. Everybody saw he got hit by a vehicle, and today that's why he's limping. Sadly, on the mental health side of the house, there are traumas that have hurt us emotionally and psychologically, emotionally, and we don't see where that came from. So we're not able to pinpoint where that came, and now it becomes DP is a limp, right? I am major depressive disorder. I am generalized anxiety. I am PTSD. I am all the symptoms that you see. And no one ever, would attribute that to someone who limps. You wouldn't sit there, for example, right, and say, you know what, Michaela is a daggone limp. She just walks around limping all day. Well, she got hit by a vehicle. That's why she limps. Oh, sorry, never mind. Sorry about that. I didn't mean it, right? But when it comes to the psychological aspect, we don't see those things. So for many of us, it's being able to have a conversation and know that, you know what, we pushed and we did the things we had to do in the service to our country. But when you put the uniform away, emotionally and psychologically, you kept that on. There was no removing that. So many individuals, sadly, looking at a disability specifically, not only do they have impairments, but they were robbed of not only the rest of their life going forward, but their kids were robbed, their families were robbed. I can't tell you how many veterans we've worked with, I've spoken to personally and worked with personally, who they are in their 50s, 60s, 70s, and literally came back from Vietnam a whole different person. And their kids never really met their dad, if you think about it, right? If you were to say, Bob used to be the life of the party. Back in the day, Bob used to dance, and man, I tell you, he could cut a rug and tell a joke like it was nobody's business. And no one knows that, right? Me and Jim know that because we went to high school with him, but the reality is that his kids never saw that, his nephews never saw that, his grandkids never saw that. And being able to identify that and have a conversation to say, these are the things that affect not only you, but those around you. They've been robbed of the privilege of the joy that you bring and light you have inside yourself, right? Many veterans, specifically looking at the invisible injuries, then begin to come to a realization that, okay, this isn't just me. These are things that have affected me, but now in turn, my best days are behind me. And that is what sets off a spiral for many if they don't have the tools to get therapy and help to understand that it's not about reliving the old days. It's that, yes, you had some good days behind you. Arguably, as of today, they may have been the best. But with tools and mechanisms and community and support and therapy, you can begin to craft a new life forward to set to create better days forward. Because what our generation and our country is missing really is the other part of the warrior ethos, right? We like to embody that, right? We're warriors, we're strong. But in reality, when you look at history, warriors had the ability to do a thing, serve, and then when they moved on, they passed that baton to the next person. And today we don't have that. I don't care, this is regardless of race, as a whole, we don't have a transmission of truth, of skills, of oral history, of being able to say, you know what, back in my day, we did a thing, but I'm gonna make sure now that you can go forward and do more than I did. And there isn't any of that. It's a competitive thing of, well, I wanna get to this and I wanna get to that. And beyond the warrior aspect, it's also being able to teach that lesson to the next generation to get the help. So one of the things that we have found very useful is connecting those dots, right? That Vietnam veteran, that Korean War veteran, that person that made it through things, regardless of what he went through or she went through, they got the skills to get to a point today to hopefully be able to speak life into someone else. And the biggest issue we have today, which is a benefit, but also a curse, is social media. Because of the fact that we can have this conversation right now. This is amazing. This is great. Regardless of the pandemic, here we are sharing a truth. That said, the overload of information that we have goes beyond the ability to transmit support, right? So we end up dealing with, you know, the negative information overload. That Vietnam veteran saw a lot of negativity, right? I'm not negating any of that. But the amount of negativity that someone deals with today, it's on a whole nother level. So when you look at what the veteran who came back, let's say from the Korean War, Vietnam, or the Gulf War in the beginning, right? It was just what you saw in the newspaper and the news. Today, all that information is in your phone. It's always in your face. So if we don't have the ability to give someone the skill set to get help and get better, sadly, statistically, I fear that we'll see a higher mortality rate as we move forward because of the fact that all that negativity becomes compounded, right? And now it's not that I want to hide from the world, now it's that the world can see everything. So in closing, when we look at the invisible injuries, one of the first things that I think that has been helpful to me is identifying what that injury is and not internalizing it, right? I'm not the limp, I have a limp. Now I need the ability to get therapy to get those tools to help me. And if it means I have a baton to walk with, it's okay. Because it's better to walk with a baton and be able to walk than not to walk at all because your leg is not able to do a thing, right? So psychologically, getting those tools to be able to cope through life and deal with things, that skill set is what's needed. So the biggest thing I would say to anyone who may be watching this, who may be seeing this, is one, find anything. It doesn't matter what it is. Whether it be family, whether it be job, whether it be your dog, whether it be a friend, find something to grab onto to be able to reach out and begin the conversation of getting help. Even if it starts with a fellow brother or a conversation like this or someone local, all those things are available to you, but this is the face of what all these things look like. And the fact of the matter is that as long as we're able to take a step forward one day at a time, we can make a difference and help the next person. Because for many of us, I might not do it for myself, but the reality is that knowing that Kimberly depends on me, and let's say Tim depends on me, or Jim's going to reach out and need me, that may be the spark, right? And whatever it takes for you to get out there and get those tools and get that help, I would say do that thing. Because again, you've been stripped and robbed of time that not only you can't give anymore, but that light that's inside of you cannot be shared with others now. And it's the reason why those divorces and those failed jobs and those failed entrepreneurial, endeavors have not made it, because the reality, all these things are seeping into your life. And the reality is that you're not a failure. Yes, you have failed at life. You failed in marriages. You failed in employment. You failed at entrepreneurship. But you failed because you didn't have the skill set to understand what you were dealing with. At the end of the day, it's like anything else. If I'm going to have a game with Jim or William or Tim, and I have a handicap, I need to be able to play equally to match with them. So psychologically, it's the same thing. If you don't understand that you need certain things to be successful in whatever it is you want to do, you're going to keep failing. But the thing is, you have to not internalize that the failure is you. It's that you have a limp. That's why you can't run and keep up with others. But it doesn't mean you can't run and do things. It just means you might have to find ways to get around that. So my last point to that is, you matter, we matter, right? It's a little ripple in the pebble. And again, if it's not for me, it's for Kimberly that I will do it. If I have the ability to speak life into Tim, or be able to speak life into Lisa or Jim or someone else, that's what it comes down to. So conversations like this turn something invisible to something visible. And we begin the process of getting the tools that we need, understanding what therapy might mean. It doesn't mean you need medication. There are a slew of different things, but at least you begin the conversation. Talk to a therapist, talk to a friend who's seeing a therapist, but ultimately just say something. Don't bottle it up inside, because the reality is the things that we internalize are going to keep eating away at us. So we've served, we did our time, we took off the uniform, but now it's time to take off the camouflage emotionally and psychologically and mentally, and truly just be who we are, and understand that the things that we may fear are never really going to happen in the day-to-day. Regardless of what's happening now in the pandemic, which may exacerbate our triggers, if in a safe space we have the ability to build community, get together, do things like this with the Hope Foundation, to be able to reach in different communities, online and in person, with like-minded individuals that want to speak truth and spread love, and hopefully help someone come back. Whether or not you served in Vietnam, whether or not you served in Korea, whether or not you served in the Gulf War, the fact is you can come back, and you can now pay forward as a warrior to another warrior who might need that and potentially may save their life. So I'll leave it there, and I'll kind of open up the Q&A and kind of toss it back to the moderators. Don't know if I stood on time, but I appreciate you all for
You're good. You're good, David. We appreciate that, man. It was an excellent presentation. We thank you for the information and your kind of spin on what the issue is, what the problems are. And I just made some bullet points as you was talking. It was really, really interesting to hear about how you portrayed emotional camouflage. Okay, and that intertwines with the invisible injury. I believe that veterans and people who have served, especially in the wars, okay, it's like you said, they have this machismo attitude. You have to be a certain type of way. They train you to be this strong person and so forth. And then when it's all over, we ask you to get back into the community, running. Okay, you're on this, this track right now. Now you have to drop all of that stuff that we trained you for. Now we want to implement you back into society, which is very darn hard for a lot of vets. Okay. And my thing is that when we talk about the invisible injury, okay, everybody who has served has an invisible injury. Okay, you may have been traumatized from the start of boot camp. Okay, that, for some people it was even traumatic for them. But to go to war, to actually be trained as a killer, okay, and seeing the things that happen on the battlefield, okay, and like I told people, I have several people in my family from the military, from the veterans, Vietnam War on down, and they have not been right ever since. Okay, my question to you, Dave, is that do people have this problem or issue of feeling maybe weak or not feeling like a soldier anymore, and they don't want to seek out this treatment? I mean, is it a personal thing most of the time, or what?
So it goes back to the first example I made, which is you suck it up and you drive on. So the things that helps us to win, wars and campaigns and push through adversity and pain, sadly, are not healthy to do, right? When you look at any combat, situation, if I were aligning, and let's say all of you here were part of my military assets, I would sequence how I would use you, right? So you see waves, right? So let's say Michaela's battalion will come in and do a thing. Then from there, Kimberly comes in and supplements and then relieves and does a thing. And we kind of overbound and do things in different capacities and forms, but it's all temporary, right? You cannot sustain those things for periods of time because it's just not realistic to be able to carry on, combat for extended periods of time with the same individual. So that mindset, then applied in life, it doesn't work because now a year, 5 years, 10 years go by, and you don't realize psychologically that you have to take a break and step back. It's not realistic to do that, right? Those are the things you do to push through. So to your point, it's the weakness aspect. It's the warrior mentality, right? We don't honor those that can't do a thing anymore, but pave the way, right? When you look at the education system, you can be a professor and eventually you become a professor emeritus, right? You become someone who has prestige to say, look, Jim, for example, was a great professor and taught, and he's retired ever since, but he's emeritus and we honor him for what he's done. And he comes by every so often and shares with the others that may come. And that's great, but in the military capacity, it doesn't work that way, right? There is no emeritus soldier, right? Some will say once a Marine, always a Marine, but at the end of the day, in here, you only see the highlight of that, right? Because we look at and we honor those sacrifices and the strength, but we don't honor that sage that gives wisdom, right? And that's something that in other cultures you see where an older individual, a prophet or, a seer or someone that held certain gifts and did something in the community at one time may have been, a warrior poet or something, but then went on to be able to teach what he did at one time, even though he physically cannot do that thing anymore. In our lifespan, we don't see that, right? We don't see, individuals that are not able to do something physically revered in that capacity. So it's like my best days are behind me. I'm just an old withered version of what I used to be. What used to I have? And because we don't have anything in our society to pass those things on and have those conversations and have that oral transmission, then you feel like that's it. What's the worth of me being here, right? I've served my purpose and I should have just never came back. That would have been a glorious way to pass, right? So it's basically that, right? There is why should I show weakness? Because then it shows that I'm everything that I was trained to not be, right? You broke your foot, drink some water, take some Tylenol, change your socks and push. Your feet hurt on a ruck march, push. Nobody wants to be that guy or gal who has weaknesses, right? So now after service, how can you say that you need help? So the last point here, if you're looking at a disability, you can't claim anything until you come to the reality of what you have. If you can articulate how this is affecting your life, your employment, and your social life, you're not going to be compensated. The system is not going to say, okay, you have something you deal with, because even with veterans who are trying to get help, they can't verbalize and vocalize when they go see a psychologist and get examined and say, okay, Jim, tell me what's going on with you. You know how it is. Good days, bad days. And it's like, okay, well, sometimes like you're fine.
Yeah. And with that, Dave, is that I talked to a vet a couple of days ago, and I said, you know, have you ever had treatment? And this is a 70-something-year-old guy, Vietnam War vet. And I said, you know, he was talking, he wouldn't talk about the war too much, okay, and what he did and so forth. And I said, well, did you ever talk to anybody, any treatment? He said, no. And I said, well, why not? He said, well, they're going to make me relive what I seen. Okay. And that hit me. And I said, what do you mean? He said, well, isn't that what a therapist is supposed to do? Okay, a therapist is supposed to take you back to the traumatic time that we're here for, that we're talking about, and go over this and kind of relive it and bring me to the present day. And I said, well, some therapists do that. I'm particularly, I kind of push everything that happened in the past, let's leave it in the past, let's move forward. But when we're talking about vets and the seriousness of what's going on mentally, okay, and what they've seen and what they've done, it's hard for some vets to come into treatment, lay everything on the table, okay, and expecting a non-serving person to understand. And this is another thing that we've been coming into an issue with, is that the program that we're developing, we're putting together for Florida, is going to be ran by veterans, because I truly believe that the veterans can support another veteran way better than what I can, even if they're not therapists. And, you know, people get it messed up with what a therapist is. Therapist is a supporting individual that can give you some insight to change some behaviors, your mentality, and so forth. But if a veteran has went through the process of therapy, who has got the treatment, who got the support and all the other stuff, I believe that they can draw in the people to show them the way, to show them the road of treatment, how it was, give them their personal opinion, and open up the floor for them to seek treatment. And I think that's the way we're going.
Such as you, David. You're a prime example.
Yeah.
So I would say, honestly, I would double down on what you're saying and add that even a conversation like this would open up a veteran to speak with you, even if you're not a veteran. Last time that we had a session like this, one of the things I brought up is, for many veterans, sadly, they came back, let's say from Vietnam, went to the BFW, went to the American Legion, and inside the military, what we have a lot of is peacocking, right? We have a lot of chest thumping, right? Well, come on now, Army beats Navy and Marine Corps stronger than this. And we have a lot of that rivalry, which is fine. But then when we come back from service, it's hard for someone, you know, like one Vietnam veteran told me, he came back, and then the Korean War veteran was like, you think you had it bad, Bob? Let me tell you about Korea. There goes Bob's story. And then now Bob in turn says the same thing to the Persian Gulf veteran. So Jim comes in ready to get some help, and he's like, oh, you think you had it bad in the Gulf War? Let me tell you what we did in Vietnam. And it becomes a thing of, well, I can't say anything because you had it worse than I did, and here we go comparing traumas. And for many, when they, let's say, deal with someone like myself or my team, it's the first time they've had the ability to just have someone listen and talk to them without having to sit there and grandstand about, you think you had it bad as a chef? Let me tell you about what I did as a ranger. It doesn't matter what you did. I don't care what your job was. All I care about is that one, you served, and what were your years. Don't care about your rank. Don't care about your job, because those things, sadly, at times get too tied up into, you know, who I am as a person. What matters is you're a veteran, you're a veteran, you're a veteran. You have a trauma, and the symptoms are the symptoms of the symptoms. It doesn't matter if it was a boot camp thing, if it was military sexual trauma, or it was PTSD or combat or being in ground zero 9/11. You experienced something that affected you. Let's get the process going to get help. So I would encourage you all to have these conversations and continue this, because myself, I personally want nothing to do with the VA. So the first time I ever spoke to someone, it wasn't that I looked for a military person. I just went and said I needed to talk to someone. And when I got the phone call, sadly, the thing that they didn't have was the ability to understand how to have the conversation. So I get the phone call back from the therapist saying, do you want a psychologist or a psychiatrist? I said, I don't know the difference, but I can talk to someone. And they're asking me, well, what are your symptoms? I'm like, it's 2 p.m. in the afternoon. I'm at work right now. I don't really feel like saying these things. So can we talk later? Oh, sorry, close at 5, right? So there was no real segue for me to get there. But I talked to a civilian therapist, and it was better for me because I felt like I didn't have to put on this whole bravado thing of being a veteran, because I can finally just kind of let things down and just be myself there. But recreating that environment, I would say, and adding veterans that are sympathetic, empathetic to others is definitely the key that I think I would definitely gravitate to.
All right. Well, thank you. Thank you for that input. So we want to open it up to the rest of the group if anybody wants to kind of continue the conversation, have any questions for David, any questions for us, or just wants to put their own input in to add to the conversation. Does anybody feel as though they want to contribute to the
Floor is open,
conversation?
folks. Floor is open.
I just have a question for DP. You did you're a really great speaker, very engaging. What is a good question for people who aren't veterans to ask our friends or veterans to start the conversation without kind of, like, you don't want to go up to someone and say, hey, do you need help? You know, you served. Like what would be a good question to kind of start the conversation?
You know, honestly, at times, it's a simple question of how are you? I'm talking a soul-gazing how are you? Because we're so accustomed in life to just pass by and it's, you know, hey, Tim, how are you? And then before he even says anything, I'm walking away. Mm-hmm. And I'm telling you that, and anyone who's dealt with someone who's experienced trauma, you see it in their eyes. You see that 1,000-mile stare. You see that look of just trying to look past everything. And when you, and Linda can probably speak to this piece on the spiritual side, when you look into someone's eyes and you truly ask them, how are you? If you truly care and have the ability to be empathetic enough, when you know something in your spirit is off to that person, right? And you just stay there and you wait, right? And you just be a human being. You'd be surprised because for many individuals, no one's ever asked a question and cared, right? It's a simple thing where, okay, Michaela comes up to DP and says, how are you? Hey, you know, I'm doing, like, no, DP, how are you? What's going on? Like, really ask the question, not pressing, not anything, as a human being. How are you? And for many individuals, that will begin to stir up things that, you know, you want to be in a place, hopefully, that you have the ability to have that conversation, right? Maybe you invite someone to have coffee and you kind of find somewhere where it's a little less secluded so they feel like they're not a spectacle, right? In the place where you have a conversation somewhere and just literally ask the question, how are you? Right? And you just ask a simple question, whether it be, let's say, that someone you know served, and just tell me about that, I'm interested. You'd be surprised, sometimes many veterans just want to be heard and cared about. And no one's really ever asked us things, right? It's just a simple thing where they thank you for the service and it just moved kind of on. And many of individuals, they would stop and say, hey, you know, my pop served and whatnot. You know, I mean, how are you? Thank you for your service. And you begin to just have a true conversation with someone. Literally, you'd be surprised how many individuals that would just tear to their core, because in therapy, for many individuals, when that therapist just looks at you and asks you, how are you today? How was your week? No, tell me about it. I care. Like, I'm not moving here till you tell me something, right? Literally, that begins for many to chip away those little walls, right? So I would say just a simple, truthful, honest, how are you, right? And even if this answer is not the one that is earth-shattering and tear-jerking, it's a whole thing of like, well, you know, you acknowledge what they're saying, and then you come back tomorrow and you ask them again. Because I'll tell you what, at the end of the day, it's that persistence. Because that wall that we have, we've built it up over such a period of time that persistency is what we know nobody's going to get through. Nobody cares enough to get through this shit. So I'm not going to just open up to you on day one. But guess what? Like clockwork, here comes Michaela. Hey, how are you? But not grandstanding, right? Not for everybody to hear what I'm saying, but just, hey, let's have lunch where you don't mind. Well, I know you're busy. You know what? I'm going to bring you something anyway, right? What do you want? Because I tell you, for me, in therapy, one of the biggest things that was cathartic for me was sharing something personal. And it was pumpkin spice latte. That was what it was, believe it or not. And my therapist said, try to share something personal with someone when they ask you the question. And the question was simply, you know, how are you? Well, you know, we're going to go take a run to Starbucks. Do you want anything? Right? And usually I'd be like, no, I'm good to go, thanks. Or, you know, coffee black. I don't want anything funky in it, right? And it was literally a, well, you know, it's fall and I like pumpkin spice latte. And people were like, wait, what? And it was, you know, something to try, but it all started with just that persistent, you know, caring, empathetic, you know, question, because you can tell a mile away someone who's already walked away before they asked the question, right? So for me, I would say that soul gazing, how are you? And just truly just looking at them and really just waiting for that true response. You'd be surprised what that would do for some individuals.
Oh, thank you. That was great.
All right. All right. Anybody else want to make a comment or have a question for David? Got to unmute yourself if you want to talk.
I'm gonna email David after this. or I don't know if we can do that Zoom room like we did before.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
I have.
Okay. Anybody else have a question, comment?
Hey, David, it's Chris. I want to just see, could I speak with you once everybody drop off for a few minutes?
Sure.
Okay, thanks.
Hey, this is Heath, and I work with DP, and I completely agree with what he just said. In particular, the empathetic way that you approach someone or you talk to someone, because, and DP, you'll probably agree. I mean, I get tired of, I'm checking out at Lowe's, and I can tell that the checker has been told to thank everyone for their service when they use their veteran card. I can tell they don't care. So sincerity, I think, is one of the biggest things. And I've had people, in fact, recently I had a woman ask me, what's wrong with you today? And that was it. I was having a tough day, and it wasn't her business. She's not my friend, and that's not the approach.
Okay, yeah, so it's being the compassion, the empathy, and truly meaning it. I mean, I know I've even just as a human, when people are like, "How are you?" And then, as you said, they'll be walking away, and they don't really care. Like, they really don't care how you're actually feeling that day. It's just that common, the social cues of just saying that. So it's just like actually meaning it, actually be genuine, and and being, when you're thanking someone for service, don't be, "No, thank you for your service." Like truly thanking somebody for their service, and that can be an opening of a conversation as well, if you're being genuine, if you're being sincere about it. And I wanted to go on a key point of what you said, David, about when you hit to the point of when you realize that it's not who you are. So your disability isn't who you are. If you have a broken leg, you're not a broken leg. So when you realize that you have PTSD, when you realize you're having these difficulties, that it's not who you are, but it's a part of you. I have worked with I have it myself, PTSD. I have, trauma in my past as well. But I worked with a lot of people with trauma, all different variations of trauma. I've worked with a lot of vets with trauma as well. And one thing with trauma, just as general, is to get to that point to where some people over-identify with their trauma. So where you can't let it go because it is who you are. And if you don't have that trauma anymore, then who are you? Who are you outside of that? So even if you haven't identified with the impacts that the war has had and the impacts of coming home, and even if you haven't identified it, but if you do identify it and then you work through it and you have to let that component kind of go of that is who you are, that's really hard to do. That's really hard to do, to let that, because who are you if you have to let that part go and say that's not who you are anymore? But it's not it's not who you are as a whole, but it's a part of who you are. So I think that was a really good point that you made, is that through doing work on yourself, through doing getting to the healthier component of it, however you're getting to the point of getting help, whether it's through a therapist, whether it's through working with somebody like David, or on that note, to be able to have someone there for you, is to know that you can get to that point. And that's a kind of a success on its own when you have been through trauma, is that when you know that it's a part of you, you can shake hands with it and be like, what's up? Like you can push it aside for the day and be like, you need to get out of my way today because I need to do X, Y, and Z, versus it continuously bumping into you and you can't do anything because it's continuously there. So I think that was a really amazing point to make, and an important one.
Mm-hmm. Right. Anybody else there? Anybody else want to make a comment or anything?
Does.
Linda?
Hold on, I'll unmute you. Give me 1 second. I'll let you know when it's unmuted. It has issues sometimes when we do it. There we go, it's unmuted.
I got it. Okay. Hi. So what I wanted to say was on the point when the gentleman who was, your speech, DP, was awesome. Everything you said about the invisible attacker, because we can't see it. But I wanted to just mention on the point where the gentleman said about being at the checkout line and people don't care, because I also had traumas, and when I was going through my personal traumas and I hid in my little box and didn't want to be out in the world communicating because I had huge family and divorce and screaming and fighting and rage issues, I would realize the way you look at things, the things change. So if I was to go out and somebody was harsh and I couldn't handle any harsh energy at that time, and those people, when you look at them, when they are speaking to you and you don't actually, you know, they, or you think they don't really mean it, they may really mean it, but they're busy doing their job. So they're in their working mind. So they're not giving you the compassion that you deserve really as a veteran. And that maybe they would if it was a different time of their day. So kind of when I was going through that and I was, you know, in fact, leaving church, you would all be sweet in church, and then all of a sudden you'd be out at a stoplight and, you know, people would be running a red light right away because they're doing their people thing. They're not in the place of loving compassion. And sometimes we might take it as they're being harsh to us, and they really do mean it and love you. And just at that time in their human lives, they're not showing it. So I just want to let you know that, you know, it depends on what we're doing in our lives. And sometimes we judge people too quickly, and they do really appreciate you, but they're just not in that headspace in that moment. Okay. So God bless all of you very much. And, you know, this is something I went to a 3-day public speaking conference Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, and we all did this, and this was fun. And I wasn't the presenter, I was an attendee, and we all did. We put our hands here in our heart space, and we all did, I am loved. And then we just did to the whole room, you are loved. And we just spread all this love, and it really does resonate with everyone, and no one hears it enough. And the buck starts right there. The minute we are all the same and we are loved. All right. So the life happens and people get busy. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. We appreciate that. And, you know, I agree with you, Heath. You know, you may not be appreciated, okay, in some, I would say some people are trying to be politically correct, okay, and, you know, thanking you and so forth. You know, it's hard for veterans to feel like they're needed, supported, or, you know, or they're thankful. You know, me being a non-vet, okay, civilian, I don't know what y'all guys been through, but I know it's been hell, you know, in most facets. Okay, so you know, some people just can't, don't feel that attachment. Okay, they watch stuff on TV, they look at war movies and stuff like that, and that's the only attachment they have. So, you know, when you meet somebody, a real vet who's been through war, who has saved our country, we all want to be politically correct, okay, and try to offer it. But Linda, I agree with you. You know, the compassion when you say it, you know, that just doesn't come out as much as it should sometimes. Okay, it's just saying it in a passing, which is almost like disrespectful in a sense. See, now I understand where you're coming from. It's like, okay, how can you say it non-passionately? Okay, and people may get it misconstrued of their attempt to offer that, you know, support. So I understand what you're saying, Heath. Anybody else want to make a comment? I do want to add something. We're talking about the groups and the people who don't know us, the Hope and Healing Foundation. This is my wife, Nicole, and I'm Cedric Bell. We are developing programs, not just for veterans. Our focus has been children, youths, and veterans suffering through mental health, I would say disabilities, but mental health issues, and who need some support. So we're going to be implementing online groups for veterans, online groups for youths, okay, and it's going to be ran by whatever category, either the youth program that we're going to be having. We actually just implemented something in the University of Florida for the college kids there. And now we're going in the process of gathering the vets, start doing a support group online first, just like this, okay? And then when we get the brick and mortar, we can have that face-to-face groups and, you know, get a little bit more together. So just to give you an overview of different services that we're offering, when we say that we're offering mental health services to veterans and children, that's going to be conducted through our sister program, with our sister business, which is Advanced Client Care. Me and my wife are clinical therapists, and we're developing a team of clinicians to support everybody. And if you have insurance and we accept your private insurance, that's okay. We will turn around and utilize that, but we're going to eliminate the copays that goes along with the insurance. So some of the copays are between $40 and $100 in some cases. We want the foundation monies to pay for your copays. Okay, if you do not have insurance or really don't want to utilize your insurance, okay, then we're going to put you in a program that you can actually have a counselor for free. Okay, so that's one of our programs that we're implementing for the veterans and the children. We don't want to be people having that hindrance of going out and seeking treatment. Okay, so we're trying to open up the doors a little bit more for people to say, hey, listen, don't worry about the money. We're going to have some qualified clinicians to treat you, to support you, and then we're going to see whatever type of services we can give them also at the same time.
And also link you up with any other services that that you're asking for. So if someone's coming to us like that needs a disability claim, who's a veteran, that we know that we've linked up with DP, that we'd be able to link them up with DP. So one of the things is for us to be able to try to give resources to individuals for whatever it is their needs are, not just for mental health. And we do have a support line that we are working on to streamline it, and so that's going to be available for just 24-hour support for somebody to be able to call in. So right now, for individuals on the call, if we want to spread the word, as DP was saying, if people need to be able to just talk, we want to just start the conversation, even if it's not starting therapy yet, you feel free to give our information to people so they can reach out if they feel like they need some support at the moment. They can email us. All of our information's at thehopeandhealingfoundation.com. So you can email us at hopehealingfoundation@gmail.com or call us at 561-779-0748. Our support line will be up, and we'll be advertising that when it's up and ready. But as of right now, we're still here, willing to help, and it's going to be at no cost for anybody when they are giving us the call. If they're wanting long-term therapy, again, we'll work through all that with individuals. But we just want to let everybody know that that is something to support to have out there right now, and also to know if somebody just needs to call. If you're like, hey, here, just call. You don't have to start therapy. Just if you need a call and somebody needs to get something off their chest, or they're just like, hey, someone told me to call here. Like, I just need to start a conversation. Like,
anytime you need to talk,
anytime.
when we have the line open, folks, it's going to be 24/7. Okay, if you just want to say hi to somebody, or you needed 15-20 minutes to vent, okay, the resource line and support line is going to have resources that if you tell us what you're looking for, a group or something like that, or an outing that you want to go to, we're going to have a lot of people connected to us that can give you maybe a furlough somewhere, okay, for free. One of our people actually has a 4-day retreat for veterans that he offers down here in South Florida. So that's open to all vets, okay, and I think their families also. So if you want to get away for 4 days, be around vets, shoot the gab and whatnot, that's very going to be very good.
It's big. What it's meant for is to start the conversation of trying for mental health, and also to build your support system back up. If as DP was saying, if you've been failing at certain points of your life, and some of your support system has been limiting, and this is a place to be able to start to build your support system back up, and specifically with other vets.
Yeah.
So,
all right.
We all thank you very much for joining. Does anybody else have, before we go?
I do.
All right, Gary.
Hey, good evening. How y'all doing?
Doing very well.
Gary?
I apologize for being late getting on the call. I was experiencing some new wine with my wife, so I was like, "Oops, I missed the call." I met this young lady, and she was in the Army, and she's going through some mental health things. She had some sexual harassment things going on while she was in the military, and she got declined in 2000, I think. And so she won't, she won't file. But I talked to her today, and I talked to her about filing. So I was listening to you guys. I wanted to get your information so I can send it to her. I missed the email and the phone number, so I was wondering if you could repeat that for me. I got my pen and paper with me now.
Sure.
I just send that to. My thing is, I just, if somebody help me, I try to help other people because I can't take it with me when I leave. So I just try to help as many people as I can. And she's a single mom with 2 daughters, and if she can get the benefits to help her out with her family, I mean, that would be great. So I'm just trying to help her out.
Gary, no problem, and I appreciate you assisting her. It's a good thing. Let me give you our phone number.
I'm ready.
561 779 0748. And our email is hopehealingfoundation@gmail.com.
Okay.
And do you think that this young woman would benefit from, I'm not sure if you were able to hear David DP's information, what they do the VA claims. Do you think it would be a benefit for her to be able to get, have that information as well?
Yeah, I in a nutshell told her because I'm a member of Veterans Insiders, VA Insiders also. So, I was telling her about it, but I'm gonna try to bring her in and see if, I can get someone to, coach her to get her thing because, I told her not to give up. I think she said she might have got out the military in 2010, but my thing is, like I told her, I've been getting denied since 1997, and I first got approved, and I didn't get my first payment till 2018. So my thing, I'm like, look, you can't give up. I said, they want you to give up. You're entitled to it. She went to Desert Storm and everything, and she was sexually harassed, and she filed paperwork while she was active Army, and said first thing you got to get your medical records in your hand. She don't even have a medical record. I mean, so I was just explaining to her the most important thing is to get your records and start building your case, and go from there. But I told her to say you can't ever quit because they throw a party when you quit.
Yeah, I would offer, just for anyone listening, and Gary as well.
What's up, my brother? Happy belated Father's Day to both of you guys. To all the callers on the phone, happy belated Father's Day.
Indeed.
Thank you.
One of the things that I've been blessed with on our team, we have up to 11 coaches now, and actually one of our female coaches and male coaches are both survivors of military sexual trauma, and I highlight that because for a lot of women who've been survivors who dealt with military sexual trauma, at times they're going to it'll be easier to have a conversation with them, with someone who's been through the process, right? So one of our coaches, she went through that. And then on the male side, we have one of our male coaches who also was a victim and survivor now of military sexual trauma. So for men also, there are a lot of men out there who have experienced or been through military sexual trauma, and the stigmas on top of all of that is a whole can of worms. So being able to connect them with individuals like that, to at least just have a conversation with someone who walked that walk, who spoke up and said a thing, I think is special and powerful to connect those pieces. So I'm blessed that we have individuals that have stepped up and shared their story and now are paying it forward.
So let me ask this question, my brother. For people that have experienced the military sexual trauma, do you connect them with the ones that have experienced that, so that connection is there?
Yeah.
Is that how do you assign?
For that one, I'd say shoot me an email and we could get her in contact with one of our female coaches who could just reach out directly, because that's one of those instances where you want to have a little more care and sensitivity because of the nature of what it is. You know, I've dealt with, you know, and worked with all kinds of individuals with backgrounds and issues, but because we have someone that's been there, the conversation is different because it's like, hey, I've been there and I know what's going on, and that's a whole different journey for them. So, but we can definitely, I'm very sensitive to that and always try to pair up and support as best we can because we have folks that can do that now.
Okay, I appreciate all of you. And I'm gonna send this information to her, and I'm, you know, I told her today to, you know, go on. She said she had a My Healthy Vet account. I told her go on there, request your medical records, and file your intent. I said once you do those two things, I said it's about building your case. I said I know some people that, you know, have coached me to the point where I feel comfortable and ready to fight against whoever ready to start something. You know, far as VA, if they ready to start, I'm ready to fight. But I think we've pretty much built my case to the point where when it's time for my CMP on January 8th, I'm gonna be like Michael Jackson on stage, and you know, it is what it is, and I feel comfortable, you know, with all the information and, you know, guidance that I received, and I'm thankful for it. And you know, I send people where if I can't solve it, I got plugs. I'll always send people where people can be helped. I never turn nobody away. So I thank you all.
We wish you luck, but it doesn't sound like you really need it. But I wish it to you anyway. It sounds like you got this. It sounds like you're a blessing to this woman, and I hope that you continue to spread that love and those words to people. So thank you.
Yes, ma'am. My pleasure.
All right.
I like this is Hiram Gonzalez. I would like to say something.
Hiram?
Yes, it's Hiram.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I've been part of the VACI champion team, Coach Pineda's team, for a little bit over 6 months now. I kind of went through the whole process of submitting claims on my own, and I think I was pretty successful based on some of the knowledge that I was gaining through the VA Claims Insiders videos, as well as watching YouTube. That being said, at some point I realized that I might be suffering from PTSD, and no one really kind of gave me any direction or any kind of guidance. So watching those videos, I said, you know what, let me reach out to the VA and get an appointment to see how I was feeling and what I was internalizing. And then finally, when I met with the doctor, they said, yeah, you have PTSD. And the PTSD I have is one that most people don't consider PTSD, which is a severe car accident. I was rear-ended on a highway, and my car was almost literally pushed underneath a tractor trailer, and the truck ran over the front of my car. So on a weekly basis, I have to go through this process with my therapist to remove myself from that situation and try to learn how to deal with it. Because at this point, when inclement weather comes, I can't drive, and it kind of debilitates me and hinders me into some of the things I want to do. For me, that was just like a car accident. It's no big deal. I'll have to learn how to deal with it. But in talking to my therapist, he's like, this is another form of PTSD that a lot of people don't talk about. So that's one of the things I just wanted to add to the group was, you know, most people think of the combat side, but there's also a non-combat portion. And I also wanted to add a little bit, part of the discussion was, I have a friend of mine who's severely injured in the military, but he doesn't have any current effects as that he knows of. And I tell them, well, you know, look at your medical records, go back, see what you have, some of the things you're dealing with. And he's dealing with alcoholism, he's dealing with aggression, he's dealing with all these things. And he doesn't relate that to being PTSD. He doesn't relate that to being the military. He just thinks that he's acting out. So sometimes it's just getting the veteran themselves to admit that they have a problem. so that they can actually go forward and try to improve on those things. So I just wanted to add that.
That's a good addition, Hiram. I tell you this, when we talk about PTSD, and I think, Dave, we talked about this before in the last group, when we talk about PTSD, everybody goes straight to veterans, okay? PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, okay, is not a specific to any culture or group, okay? And I'll give you an example, 9/11, okay? Everybody, the world, especially Americans, have PTSD because of that. Okay, you being in New York is because your PTSD is a little bit more severe than we living down in Florida. Okay, but you still, the world was affected by that. Okay, and when we talk about PTSD, it's okay. How do you identify it? Okay, do I have it? Do I don't have it? Well, when we talk about that, there's a lot of emotional attachments to PTSD, okay? And Hiram, is what you're saying is that your friend, you know, he's covering it maybe with alcohol, with drugs, or whatever have you, and they really don't understand the terminology in mental health, okay? What's going on with me? I can't identify why I'm doing these behaviors. So what we look at is if something that you're doing, you know, if you're depressed, you have anxiety, anything like that, and is really interfering with your daily schedule, your daily activities, okay, then you may have an issue, okay? If you're depressed all the time and you're taking drugs to mask it, okay? If you're anxious and you don't, you have a phobia of going outside, being around crowds and stuff like that, and you have to take alcohol or some drugs to subside that so you can function better. Okay, all of these things can be identified or labeled under PTSD, but if there is a big traumatic event, okay, that encompasses in your life, and from that point on, your behaviors and your emotional instability had started to go erratic, that's when we can look at the terminology of PTSD, okay? Down here in Florida, 2 years ago, the Douglas shooting, okay, at the high school that killed 27 kids. No, I'm sorry, 17 kids, okay? Can you imagine, okay, those kids' trauma? Okay, that the survivors I'm talking about, okay? The survivors in that school, in that neighborhood have PTSD, okay? Their lives will never be the same, especially the children, okay? Some of those kids were inside the building when that happened and right in front of them, okay? So, and this is one of the reasons that we are stressing mental health now, especially down here in South Florida in different states. So all of these things are happening and it's traumatizing people. And just give you one more example, just recently what has been happening is, you know, the shootings of the policemen with the African-American males and all of these walks and riots and so forth are traumatizing people, okay? The people that was there in front of the person that got killed or got choked out, they're traumatized, okay, to seeing that in front of their faces, okay? So, you know, people just need to open up, actually identify what's going on, look at your life. Has it changed since this traumatic event, okay? Are you depressed? Are you angry? Are you doing behaviors that you don't normally do? And can we attach it to an event, and then we go from there to work out how can we help.
But I also like, Hiram, that you stated about the car accident, that some PTSD and the PTSD that you had is related to a car accident, where some people may say, oh, well, that's not that big of a deal. You'll just, you know, you'll just have to get up and you'll get over it, type of thing. And some people, and that's something that, you know, you have to do on a daily basis if you want to get out, especially if you live in a place where public transportation isn't big. And even if it is public transportation, if it's not on a subway or something, you're still taking a bus, and you can still be triggered. You're triggered actually even more because there's cars everywhere. So I appreciate you bringing that to attention. So even if you have been in combat or you are of that, even if you haven't had combat and you have PTSD, and maybe you have been able to overcome some of that, but now you're back into civilian life and you've experienced something that has invoked PTSD in you that has been within civilian life, like a car accident. And so I think that that's important to point out, is that it doesn't have to be something as traumatic as well, all of it's traumatic if it's PTSD, but something as we're thinking of like a shooting or something of that nature. But it can be as like a car accident, because that can have the same impacts as something like a shooting, of what you had to go through and what occurred in that moment. So PTSD, as Cedric stated, is something is what your emotional impacts that you have and psychological impacts are after an event and what happens after that. So I think that that's definitely, I'm glad that you brought that up, and I really hope that your friend is able to be able to get the help that they did, and you've already started the conversation with them, so that's important as well. So
The only issue, the one last thing I wanted to add was, in my conversation, the first thing he told me was, yeah, but I'm fine. There's no, I can walk. I don't have any loss of limb, so I'm fine. I'll deal with it. But I tried to express him that that's just a small part of the entire issue that he could potentially be having. He's like, well, I'm not as bad as the next guy, so forget about it. And that's how the conversation ended. And that's how now every time I see him, I have to push him a little bit more and kind of get his feel for why he's feeling that way and make him understand it doesn't have to be a loss of a limb. It doesn't have to be something dramatic like that. It could be something internally that he can seek help for.
Yeah, well, you started, and as DP had stated earlier, that that's often a thought process that occurs, that well, I'm not as bad as the next person, and we can all do that, and sometimes it can benefit us to say that, like, I'm not as bad as X, Y, and Z, to be able to get through something, but that can be a coping mechanism to be able to get through stuff, to be able to survive. But that can also, that same survival skill can be something that hinders us in the future and is able to kind of debilitate us. But that conversation you're having, it's having it somewhere, because he's not having, it doesn't seem like he's having it anywhere else.
You started to support him already. He just has to open the door a little bit, a little bit wider for you. But we appreciate you, man. We appreciate you doing that. All right, folks. Well, if anybody else has anything else to add, if not, we're going to bring it back to Michaela, and we want to thank everybody for coming. We appreciate you, David, for your presentation. We want to welcome everybody to our next session, but I'm going to give it back to Michaela, and she has our final words.
Yes, again, thank you so much, everyone. DP, thank you for speaking, and thank you, everyone who also spoke and was engaging as well. And thank you for all who listened along. Please, if you would like to join us, the next time we will be doing our meeting is July 6th at 7:30. Again, that's July 6th at 7:30. And we really, really hope to see you there.
Thank you all for having me. Great seeing you guys.
Thank you, everyone.
You too.
All right,
Hey, David.
Y'all have a nice one. Everybody stay safe out there.
Yes, take care.
Okay, now.
Hey, David.